I still remember that night with painful clarity, the kind that stays sharp no matter how much time passes. Our family house in Boston stood quiet from the outside, its white paint clean, its wooden porch wide and proud. Neighbors always said it looked like a house built to last. Inside, though, the air felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to break finally. I was sitting at the dining table, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, watching my younger brother Ethan pace back and forth across the living room. He had always done that when he was nervous, rubbing the back of his neck, staring at the floor, then lifting his eyes with sudden courage. He was 24 then, tall, thin, and worn down by months of quiet arguments that never truly ended. That night, he looked calmer than I expected, almost resolved, like someone who had already accepted the cost of his decision. Our father, Richard, stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, jaw tight. He was a man who believed strength meant control and tradition meant safety. He had built his manufacturing company from the ground up decades earlier, and for years it had paid for everything we had. His house, our schools, our sense of pride. To him, the business was not just work. It was identity. Loyalty in his mind mattered more than logic, and obedience mattered more than progress. Ethan had never fit comfortably into that world. Even as a kid, while father talked about machines and supply orders, Ethan talked about computers and systems. He spent nights teaching himself code, fixing problems no one else noticed, asking questions that made father uncomfortable. I knew Ethan respected what father had built, but he also saw what father refused to see. Orders were shrinking, costs were rising, clients were leaving quietly, one by one. That evening, Ethan finally said it out loud. He told our parents he would not join the family business after college. He said he wanted to build a software platform for small businesses, something affordable and simple, something that actually solved real problems. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. Father's face changed instantly. The calm cracked, replaced by anger so sharp it felt like heat. He asked Ethan if all the years of support and all the money spent on his education meant nothing. Mother, Elaine, stood near the staircase, one hand gripping the railing, her eyes fixed on the floor. She hated conflict, always had. Silence was her shield. Ethan tried to explain. He said the company was failing not because people were lazy, but because the systems were old. He said refusing to change was more dangerous than trying something new. Father laughed, a short, bitter sound, and said dreams do not pay bills. He said software was a gamble and family was forever. The argument grew louder, words piling on top of each other until they lost their meaning. I wanted to step in to calm them, but my voice felt trapped in my chest. I watched my brother stand his ground, not raising his voice, not backing down. That was what scared father the most. Disobedience was one thing. Quiet certainty was another. Then father said the words none of us expected to hear. Not like that, not so clearly. He told Ethan to leave the house if he was not willing to join the business. He said he could come back only when he was ready to stop chasing fantasies and start acting like a responsible son. The room went silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed louder than usual. Ethan did not argue. He nodded once, slowly, as if the decision had already been made for him. He went upstairs and packed a single bag. I followed him into his room, my heart pounding. Posters from college still hung on the walls. His desk was cluttered with notebooks full of ideas, lines of code scribbled in the margins. He looked around like someone saying goodbye to a version of himself. I asked him where he would go. He smiled at me, soft and tired, and said he would figure it out. He told me not to worry. He always told me that. Before leaving, he showed me his bank balance on his phone. $3,200. That was all he had. No job lined up. No apartment. Just a car and a belief he refused to let go of. Mother did not hug him. She stood at the top of the stairs, her face pale, whispering his name like a question she was too afraid to finish. Father did not look at him at all. Ethan walked out the front door, the sound of it closing echoing through the house like a final answer. I watched from the window as his old car pulled away from the curb. The streetlights reflected off the windshield, and then he was gone. In that moment, the house felt bigger and emptier at the same time. I did not know then how many nights he would sleep in that car, parking near libraries and gyms, using public Wi-Fi to code late into the night. I only knew something important had been broken. Over the next few days, Father acted as if Ethan had never existed. He talked about the business, about orders and deadlines, filling every silence with work. Mother moved quietly through the house, cleaning things that were already clean, avoiding my eyes. I felt caught in the middle, angry at Father, worried about Ethan, and ashamed that I was still sleeping in my childhood bed while my brother faced the world alone. Weeks passed, then months. I heard bits of news through short calls and late-night messages. Ethan was still working on his software. He had no home, but he had progress. He said living in his car forced him to focus. No distractions, no noise, just code, discipline, and belief. I admired him, but I was also afraid. Dreams are expensive, and failure costs more than money. Meanwhile, the family business continued to struggle. Father blamed the market, the workers, the suppliers, everyone except himself. I wanted to tell him Ethan might have been right, but the words never came. Fear keeps families quiet in strange ways. Looking back now, that night was not just about a fight. It was about control, fear, and the cost of refusing to listen. The door that closed on Ethan did more than send him away. It set two futures in motion, one rooted in pride, the other in possibility. At the time, none of us understood how far those paths would stretch, or how they would one day cross again. Ethan did not tell anyone how bad things really were at first. For weeks after he left the house, all I received were short messages. He said he was fine. He said he was busy. He said he had a plan. I wanted to believe him, so I did. It was easier than imagining my younger brother alone, sleeping in his car somewhere in America, trying to build a future with nothing but stubborn hope. Months passed before he finally called me late one night. I remember sitting on my bed, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. When I answered, I heard traffic in the background. He told me he was in Chicago. His voice sounded tired but calm, like someone who had already made peace with hardship. That was when he admitted the truth. He was living in his car. He parked near libraries during the day to use free internet and near a cheap gym at night so he could shower. Most days he ate coffee and sandwiches. Sometimes nothing at all. I felt sick hearing it. I asked him why he never told me. He laughed softly and said he did not want pity. He said discomfort forced him to stay focused. Every night after sunset, he opened his laptop in the front seat and coded until his eyes burned. He said the parking lot felt like a strange kind of office. Quiet, honest. No one cared who his father was or what he had lost, only what he could build. Ethan had turned his idea into something real. A simple software tool for small shops. It helped owners track sales, manage inventory, and understand where their money was actually going. No complex words. No heavy systems. Just clean screens and clear numbers. He priced it at $29 a month, low enough that even struggling businesses could afford it. He said if his tool could not help someone survive, it was not worth selling. The first users came slowly. Corner grocery, repair shop, family-owned cafe. 10 users became 20, then 50. He answered every support message himself, even at 3 in the morning. When people asked for features, he built them. When something broke, he fixed it within hours. Word spread quietly, the way real value often does. By the time his users passed 200, his monthly income reached nearly $6,000. It was the first time in months he allowed himself to breathe. He rented a tiny studio apartment with one window and cracked walls. It smelled like old paint, but it had a door that locked and a bed that did not fold into a seat. To him it felt like luxury. While Ethan was building something new from nothing, our family business continued to sink. Orders arrived late. Machines broke down. Costs rose without explanation. Customers complained, then quietly disappeared. Father blamed everyone except the system itself. Workers were lazy. Suppliers were unreliable. The market was unfair. At dinner, he spoke in angry circles, repeating the same complaints, refusing to see the pattern. I tried to tell him that times were changing, that businesses needed better tools, clearer data, and faster decisions. He dismissed me with a wave of his hand. He said trends came and went, but tradition lasted. He said the business had survived worse. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I felt fear settle in my chest like a stone. Ethan kept moving forward. Every dollar he earned went back into his platform. He did not buy new clothes. He did not take breaks. He did not celebrate milestones. He worked with discipline that bordered on obsession, not because he wanted to prove Father wrong, but because failure meant going back to nothing. Survival sharpened his focus. By the end of his second year, his company earned over $180,000 annually. That number stunned me when he told me. It felt unreal compared to the silence that had followed his exile. Then came the offer. A small investment firm from New York reached out after hearing about his growth. They offered $500,000 for a minority share. To me it sounded like victory. To Ethan it sounded like a risk. He said no. He told me accepting money too early meant losing control. He wanted to build something solid, not inflated. He said he remembered how Father's company once chased growth without understanding its own weaknesses. He refused to repeat that mistake. I realized then that Ethan had learned from our family business, even as it pushed him away. What none of us understood at the time was how wide his impact had already spread. Small businesses across America were replacing their old systems with his software. Quietly, without announcements or press. His tool was becoming the standard for people who needed clarity more than promises. Without trying, he was exposing how slow and fragile older systems really were. Our family company was one of them. I did not know this until much later, but some of the complaints Father mentioned at dinner were problems Ethan's platform solved easily. Inventory mismatches, delayed reporting, wasted labor. The same cracks that Ethan had warned about years ago were now impossible to ignore. Still, Ethan never spoke badly about our parents. He asked about Mother often. He asked if Father was healthy. There was no bitterness in his voice, only distance. He said anger would slow him down, and he had already lost enough time. Sometimes I wondered how different things could have been if Father had listened that night in the living room. But then I watched Ethan grow into someone stronger than circumstance, shaped not by comfort but by pressure. Living in a car had stripped his life down to essentials: purpose, discipline, belief. Looking back, those months in parking lots and quiet apartments were not just survival. They were preparing. Ethan was not just building software. He was building a new way of thinking, one grounded in reality, empathy, and patience. While our family clung to what had worked before, Ethan was learning how to create what would work next. That contrast, invisible at first, was growing sharper every day. And soon, it would force all of us to face the truth we had avoided for far too long. Ethan told me the truth on a quiet evening when the city outside my apartment felt unusually still. We were sitting across from each other at a small kitchen table, the kind that wobbles if you lean too hard. He looked different from the way he had months before. Stronger, firmer. His hands no longer shook when he spoke about the future. I expected him to talk about growth, profits, or new customers. Instead, he surprised me. He said he felt responsible for what was happening to our family business. At first, I thought I had misunderstood him. After everything Father had done, after being thrown out of the house with nothing but a bag and a car, I assumed Ethan would feel relief watching the company struggle. But he shook his head. He said he did not want them to fail because of him. He said success felt hollow if it came from someone else's collapse, especially when that someone was family. That was when he told me what he had been working on quietly, late at night, after his own company's work was done. He was building something new. Not a public product, Not something he planned to sell widely. Private solution. A stronger, more advanced version of his software, designed specifically for companies like ours. He knew our family business inside and out. He understood where money leaked, where time was wasted, and where decisions were delayed because no one had clear numbers. This new system tracked costs in real time, reduced waste, and showed problems before they exploded. Did not replace people. It helped them see the truth. But Ethan did not want credit. He created a small consulting firm in San Francisco, registered under a name no one in our family would recognize. He offered the system quietly, letting companies believe it came from an outside team. He never mentioned his own platform. He never mentioned our family. He said anonymity was protection, not weakness. Months later, our family company began using the system. I found out by accident during dinner one night. Father was talking, animated in a way I had not seen in years. He said the numbers were finally making sense. He said delays were dropping. He said profits, though small, were returning. Mother smiled softly, relief written across her face. I sat there, heart pounding, knowing the truth and saying nothing. Within 6 months, the change was undeniable. Losses slowed. Orders stabilized. Workers stopped quitting. Father praised the new system at every dinner, calling it the smartest decision the board had made. He never questioned where it came from. He never imagined it could belong to the son he had thrown out. Ethan never asked how it felt to hear Father praise his work without knowing it was his. He simply listened when I told him. I could tell it hurt, but not in the way I expected. It was not anger. It was sadness mixed with acceptance. He said some lessons take time and some pride takes pain to soften. Then the investors arrived. The board called an emergency meeting. I was allowed to attend, but only as an observer. The mood in the room was tense. Papers were stacked high on the table. Coffee cups sat untouched. The investors were clear. Either the company would be sold, merged, or shut down within the year. The recent improvement had slowed the fall, but not enough to guarantee survival. Father looked smaller that day. Not weak but tired. The man who once commanded rooms now struggled to keep his voice steady. When the discussion reached its breaking point, the door opened. Ethan walked in. He wore a clean suit, nothing flashy. His hair was neatly cut. His posture was straight, confident but calm. No anger. No satisfaction. Just quiet certainty. The room fell silent. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Father stared at him as if he were seeing a ghost. Ethan introduced himself to the board, then turned to Father and told the truth. He explained the consulting firm. He explained the system. He explained why he had done it. He said he did not want revenge. He said he wanted a resolution. Silence filled the room. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the investors looked stunned. Father's face shifted through disbelief, confusion, and finally understanding. He asked one question. Why? Ethan answered simply. He said building something valuable mattered more than proving someone wrong. He said the business could still survive, but only if it accepted change fully, not halfway. That meeting changed everything. For the first time, Father listened without interrupting. For the first time, Ethan spoke without defending himself. The room felt different, like something heavy had finally been set down. What happened next would reshape our family forever. Father looked older that day, and not just because of the gray in his hair. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight he had carried for years had finally pressed down on him all at once. The boardroom was quiet after Ethan finished speaking, the kind of silence that feels heavy but honest. Father stared at the table for a long time before lifting his eyes to my brother. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and unsteady. He asked Ethan why he did not destroy us when he had the power to do it. The question shocked me. It was not something Father would have asked years ago. Back then, strength meant domination to him. Now, he sounded like a man trying to understand a world that had moved on without him. Ethan did not answer right away. He took a breath, steady and controlled, the same way he always did when he wanted to speak carefully. He said he did not want revenge. He said revenge would only prove that pain had won. What he wanted was meaning. He wanted to build something that mattered, something that solved problems instead of creating new ones. He said success felt empty if it came from watching others fall, especially when those others were family. That was when Ethan made his offer. He explained that his company, the one he had built from parking lots and late nights, was now valued at $12 million. He did not say it with pride. He said it like a fact, something earned through discipline and patience. He said our family business, though still struggling, had value too. It had history, workers who depended on it, and relationships built over decades. He proposed a merger. Ethan would bring his technology fully into the company. He would modernize the systems, train the staff, and fix the structural problems that had nearly destroyed it. In return, the legacy business would survive. Jobs would be protected. The name would continue. No one would be erased. The investors exchanged looks. This was not the outcome they expected. Father sat frozen, his hands clasped tightly together. Mother covered her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. I felt something loosen in my chest that I had carried for years. Father stood up slowly. For a moment I thought he might refuse out of habit, out of pride. Instead he walked toward Ethan and stopped in front of him. He did not apologize. Not with words. But he nodded once, deeply, and said he agreed. That was the moment everything changed. The weeks that followed were difficult but different. There were meetings, legal papers, and long discussions that stretched late into the night. Ethan worked alongside people who once dismissed him, never raising his voice, never reminding them of the past. He focused on solutions, not history. Father struggled at first. Letting go is harder than failing. But slowly I saw him change. He asked questions instead of giving orders. He listened. He learned. For the first time he admitted he did not know everything. Watching that transformation felt more powerful than any argument could have been. The house in Boston felt different too. Warmer. Lighter. Ethan came home for dinner again, sitting at the same table where he had once been told to leave. Mother cooked his favorite meals. Father spoke to him about the future, not the past. Sometimes they argued, but now the arguments ended in understanding instead of silence. One evening, after everyone had gone to bed, Ethan and I sat on the porch. The same porch I had watched him walk away from years earlier. The street was quiet, the light soft. I asked him if it had all been worth it. The hunger. The loneliness. He smiled and said the hardship taught him who he was when no one was watching. He said comfort hides weaknesses, but struggle reveals truth. He said he would not wish those years on anyone, but he would not trade them either. Today I tell this story because it changed how I understand success. I used to think success meant winning, being right, or proving someone wrong. Now I know it means building something so valuable that even those who doubted you cannot deny its worth. It means choosing repair over revenge and purpose over pride. Our family did not just save a business. We rebuilt trust. And that, to me, is the greatest return of all.